In this video, we're going to upload the WordPress files to our web hosting account. So here are my WordPress files on my computer, and here is my file transfer application. I'm just going to use this application to move these files up to my web hosting account. So you may recall that we have this sample hosting letter here. You're going to need to use your own here, of course, but my sample says that I should be using SFTP, and I have a username, a password, and a host name. So I'm going to copy this host name and switch back to my file transfer application and plug that in here. Some of them will say server, some will say host name, or just host, various things. But host name is what you fill in there. Username and password, just like it says. You'll need to fill in the real details here, of course. And once you've filled all this stuff in, you can click List or Connect or whatever it is that your particular hosting setup uses. Now in my case, because I'm using sample details here, I'm going to need to just fake this and switch over to my real connection. Once you've made the connection, you may be dropped into a home folder like this one. This is not the folder from which your website is actually served on the web. This one is public HTML. Different web hosting companies have different setups. Your folder may be called public HTML, it may be called www, it could be called a lot of different things. Your welcome letter should explain which one is the right one. But if you see something that looks like public HTML or www or web or something like that, that's probably the right one. Some web hosting companies like GoDaddy will just drop you straight into your web folder, and that's the only place you have access to. In this case, we have a public HTML folder, so that's where files are going to go. Close that hosting letter. Okay, so what you do is you just select all these files and drag them in. You just release here, and the files will start uploading. Now, I'm not going to do this for real because the uploading process will take a few minutes, and I don't want to waste your time. So I've already done that. So let's just take a look in another tab at my public HTML folder with WordPress already installed. So here are all the files. At this point, you can run the WordPress installer and you're good to go, but there is one more step I recommend, which is to take your WP config file and move it up a level. Now this is only really worth doing if you are able to install WordPress in your root public HTML folder directly. If you're installing it in the subdirectory, this is not really worth your time. But in this case, because I am able to do that, I'm going to take it and I'm going to move it into my home directory. So there it is. Now it's in here with all this other stuff. Now the reason I do this is that this folder is not accessible at all to a web browser. All those usernames and passwords and secure data that I put in the config file are not accessible in a web browser. If you can do this, it's a good idea for security. If you do leave the WP config file in here, it's fine. Those details are going to be stripped out by PHP. They'll never be visible unless something really crazy goes wrong with your server. It's a nice thing to do if you can, but it's not mandatory by any means. So once this is done, you have successfully put all your WordPress files on the internet, and you are now ready to proceed.